The alarm screamed through County General just as Dr. Ethan Walker stormed into the ER, snow melting off his jacket. Room 3, female, mid-30s, critical trauma, a nurse shouted. Ethan rushed in and froze. On the gurney lay Madison Cole, the powerful CEO who'd ended his career 2 years ago. Now, fate had brought her back, bleeding, broken, and only he could save her. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Let's begin. The alarm ripped through County General just as Dr. Ethan Walker burst through the sliding doors, snow still melting from his shoulders. Room 3, female, mid-30s, blunt trauma, a nurse shouted. Ethan sprinted inside and froze. On the gurney lay Madison Cole, the ruthless CEO who destroyed his career 2 years earlier. He hesitated for half a heartbeat. The same woman who'd called his compassion insubordination now hovered between life and death. Scalpel, he ordered, voice steady but jaw tight. Let's save her. The room became a storm of motion, machines beeping, gloves snapping, nurses rushing, blood pressure dropping. Ethan clamped an artery, working like a man possessed. He didn't see a CEO. He saw a patient. 20 brutal minutes later, the monitor leveled. A heartbeat steadied. She's stable, he whispered. Only then did his hands start to shake. He looked down at the woman who had cost him everything and realized he'd just given it all back. Outside the glass, his 9-year-old son Noah sat swinging his legs on a bench, watching through tired eyes. When Ethan finally stepped out, Noah smiled faintly and handed him a cup of cocoa. You saved her, didn't you? Ethan nodded. Yeah, buddy. Because we don't get to choose who we save. He didn't notice Madison's eyelids flutter open, or the way her lips trembled as she whispered his name. The hum of the heart monitor was the first thing Madison Cole heard. The sterile smell of antiseptic, the distant echo of footsteps, then pain, sharp and cold, crawling up her side. She turned her head slowly and froze. Standing by the window, hands in his coat pockets, was Ethan Walker. Her throat tightened. You? He didn't turn around. Yeah, he said quietly. Small world. Memories hit like a flood. The boardroom, his defiance, her signature on the termination papers. He'd begged to save an uninsured patient. She'd said no. He'd saved the man anyway and lost everything. Now here he was, the same steady voice that once challenged her pride, saving her life. You shouldn't have, Madison whispered, her voice hoarse. Ethan finally looked at her, his eyes steady but tired. Didn't do it for you. Then, softer. My son's watching. I need him to know we help people, even when it's hard. The words landed like a knife. Madison had faced hostile takeovers and lawsuits without blinking, but she couldn't meet his gaze now. You could have let me die, she said, barely above a whisper. I could have, he admitted, but I'm still a doctor. You can take that title away, not the oath. Silence stretched. Machines beeped. Snow fell quietly against the window. When he turned to leave, she whispered, Ethan, thank you. He paused at the door. Rest. You'll need it. And as the door shut, Madison felt the weight of something she'd long forgotten pressing against her chest. Guilt. For the first time in years, she didn't feel powerful. She felt human. Morning sunlight leaked through the blinds of room 312, painting pale lines across the floor. Madison hadn't slept. The name Ethan Walker kept echoing in her mind. 2 years ago, she'd watched security escort him from her building. Head high, reputation destroyed, career ended. She'd told herself it was policy, that it wasn't personal. But lying here now, alive because of him, the word felt hollow. A nurse entered with a clipboard. Your vitals are strong, Miss Cole. You'll be discharged by evening. Where's Dr. Walker? The nurse hesitated, then smiled faintly. He's in the pediatric wing. Volunteers there when he's off shift. Madison's chest tightened. He still works? Later, when she could stand, she slipped quietly down the corridor. The children's ward smelled of crayons and sanitizer. Laughter spilled from one of the rooms. Through the glass, she saw Ethan, kneeling beside a little boy, showing him how to fold paper cranes. His sleeves were rolled up, a stethoscope around his neck. Beside him sat a small child with the same hazel eyes, Noah. Good job, buddy, Ethan said, smiling. Told you we'd get it to fly. Madison's breath caught. This wasn't the angry ex-doctor she remembered. This was a father, gentle, patient, grounded. A man rebuilding his life without bitterness. When Ethan noticed her reflection in the glass, their eyes met for one suspended second. He didn't speak, didn't smile, just nodded politely and went back to the child in front of him. She turned away quickly, heart pounding. For the first time in years, she didn't know what to say or who she was supposed to be. That night, as snow began to fall again outside her penthouse window, Madison opened her laptop and typed a name into the search bar. Ethan Walker, Community Clinic, Eastbrook District. By the time Madison's car reached Eastbrook, the skyline had faded into cracked bricks and flickering neon. The snow here wasn't white. It was gray, mixed with soot and exhaustion. Her driver hesitated. "You sure this is the address, ma'am?" "Yes," she said quietly. "Wait here." She stepped out, heels crunching on the ice, and stopped in front of a modest brick building with a flickering sign. Eastbrook Free Community Clinic. No insurance, no questions. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and hope. Children's drawings lined the walls. A mother sat rocking her sick baby in the corner. An old man coughed softly, a blanket over his knees. And there, wearing the same calm expression she'd seen in the ER, was Ethan Walker, checking vitals on a teenage boy with a cast. He looked different here. At peace. "Dr. Walker," she said, her voice careful. He turned, startled. "Miss Cole." Her tailored coat and polished boots looked painfully out of place among the scuffed floors and humming heaters. "I wanted to see it for myself," she said, glancing around. "You built all this." "With help," he replied. "Donations, volunteers, good people." She walked closer, her voice low. "After everything I took from you, you still came back to medicine." Ethan shrugged. "People still get sick. Can't let pride stand in the way of that." A little boy tugged his sleeve then, tiny, bundled, eyes bright. "Dr. Walker, my cough's gone." Ethan smiled and ruffled the kid's hair. "Told you those soups your mom makes her stronger than antibiotics." The boy laughed and ran off. Madison watched in silence. Every patient who passed thanked him by name. No titles, no fear, just trust. Something inside her cracked. When Ethan turned back, she swallowed hard. "I came to apologize," she said. "For before. For what I cost you." He met her gaze calmly. "I already forgave you, Madison. You just weren't here to hear it." Her throat burned. "Then let me make it right." He shook his head. "This isn't about money." But she wasn't offering money. Not yet. She was offering the first piece of herself she'd lost, humility. The next morning, the snow turned to a soft drizzle that blurred the city's sharp edges. Ethan was restocking bandages when a black SUV pulled up outside the clinic. He frowned. It didn't belong here. The door opened, and Madison Cole stepped out, holding a large envelope. She looked different. No makeup, no entourage, just a quiet resolve in her eyes. "Morning, Dr. Walker," she said softly. He set down the supply box. "You didn't have to come back." "I know," she replied. "But I wanted to." Inside, patients watched curiously as the woman in the elegant gray coat approached the counter. She glanced around. The peeling paint, the worn chairs, the heater that wheezed more than it worked. "How do you even keep this place open?" she asked. Ethan gave a tired smile. "Donations, mostly. Sometimes my own pocket. People here pay with soup, or help clean, or just say thank you. That's enough." Madison opened the envelope and slid it toward him. Inside was a certified check, a sum big enough to fund the clinic for years. Ethan froze. "What is this?" "An apology," she said simply. "And a chance for you to do what I stopped you from doing before. Save people without fear of losing everything." He stared at her, speechless. "Madison, I can't take this." "You can," she insisted. "Because this time, it's not charity. It's restitution." He exhaled sharply, torn between gratitude and pride. "Money doesn't fix what happened," he said quietly. "No," she agreed. "But maybe it can help heal something." For a long moment, neither spoke. The low hum of the heater filled the silence. Finally, Ethan pushed the envelope back toward her. "I'll accept it, if you come to the reopening. Not as the CEO who signs the check. As Madison, the person who believed in a second chance." Her lips parted in surprise. Then, slowly, she nodded. And for the first time, the two stood not as doctor and executive, but as two broken souls rebuilding the same thing from opposite sides, faith. A week later, sunlight spilled through the frosted windows of the Eastbrook Clinic for the first time in months. Fresh paint gleamed. New chairs lined the lobby. The old heater was gone, replaced by a humming unit that actually worked. Outside, a modest sign hung above the door. Walker Community Health. Hope heals. Ethan stood near the entrance, his tie slightly crooked, his hands still smelling faintly of antiseptic and sawdust. Beside him, Noah clutched a stack of homemade flyers he'd drawn in crayon, each one with a stick figure doctor and the words, "My dad helps people." "Ready?" Ethan asked. Noah grinned. "Always." As the doors opened, a crowd of neighbors poured in, mothers, retirees, kids, even city officials who'd once ignored this block. And near the back, almost unnoticed in her simple coat, stood Madison. She didn't carry the air of a CEO today. Her hair was loose, her hands nervous. When Ethan's gaze found hers across the room, she smiled, small, uncertain, but real. He stepped up to the small podium someone had borrowed from the local school. 2 years ago, he began, I lost everything I thought made me a doctor. My title, my reputation, my place. But I learned something better. Healing doesn't need walls or funding. It needs people who still believe in each other. He glanced at Madison. Sometimes, it even takes someone you least expect to remind you of that. Applause rippled through the room. Madison lowered her head, eyes shimmering. When the ribbon was cut, she approached him slowly. "You didn't have to mention me," she said quietly. "I did," he replied. "Because forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering differently." She exhaled shakily, the words cutting deeper than she expected. Behind them, Noah tugged her sleeve. "Miss Madison, you should see the new exam room. Dad painted it blue, 'cause he said blue feels like hope." She smiled through tears. "Then I think I'll like it here." Outside, the clouds broke, and for the first time all winter, sunlight streamed through, soft, warm, and new. By mid-February, the clinic pulsed with life. Ethan barely had time to breathe between patients, and yet, he didn't mind. Each bandaged cut, each shared laugh reminded him why he'd chosen this life. What surprised him most wasn't the work. It was Madison's return. At first, she came quietly, dropping off supplies, signing papers, lingering by the door as if unsure she was welcome. Then one evening, she stayed long after closing, sleeves rolled up, scrubbing dried paint from a wall she'd insisted on helping fix. "You're the CEO of Coal Industries," Ethan said, amused. "You don't need to be doing this." She smiled faintly. "You'd be surprised how good it feels to earn blisters for something real." He glanced at her hands, red, raw, honest. "Guess I should start charging you hourly." She laughed thin, soft and free, and for the first time since he'd met her, Ethan saw the woman behind the armor. Not the ruthless executive, just Madison. When they finished cleaning, he poured her a mug of cocoa from the small kettle Noah always insisted on keeping in the break room. She accepted it with both hands. "I don't remember the last time someone offered me something without expecting a deal in return," she said quietly. Ethan leaned back against the counter. "Maybe that's why you stopped expecting kindness." Her eyes lifted to his, and for a moment, the air between them shifted, fragile, steady, full of unspoken things neither dared name. Then Noah burst in, waving a crayon drawing. "Dad, look. Miss Madison's in this one too." They both laughed, the tension dissolving into something gentler. Madison crouched down beside the boy. "Do I get to hang it on the wall?" "Only if you promise to visit again," Noah said. She met Ethan's eyes, smiling. "Then I guess I have no choice." And as she pinned the drawing to the wall beside the clinic's logo, Ethan realized something startling. For the first time in years, he wasn't just healing others. He was healing too. The following week, the city skyline glimmered beneath a cold drizzle as Madison Cole stepped into the glass tower of Coal Industries for the first time in months. Her reflection in the elevator door looked like a stranger, tired eyes, softened edges, a woman who no longer fit in the empire she'd built. The boardroom was already full. Men in tailored suits, polished smiles, and colder hearts. "Madison," said Greg Simmons, her CFO, rising to greet her. "We heard you've been busy." His tone carried the kind of politeness that cut. "I have," she replied evenly. "Eastbrook Clinic is officially funded and expanding." A ripple of disapproval swept the table. One director snorted. "A charity clinic? Madison, we're a healthcare conglomerate, not a rescue mission." Her jaw tightened. "We profit from people's pain every day. Maybe it's time we invest in healing." The room fell silent, except for Greg, who leaned forward, voice low. You're risking shareholder trust over sentimentality. You've changed. She met his gaze. That's the point. When she left the building, the rain hit harder, streaking her car window like accusation. Her phone buzzed, a message from Ethan. Clinic heater's out again. We'll manage. How's the big world treating you? She smiled faintly. Louder than it should be. I'll bring a new unit tomorrow. But as she typed, a second message arrived, from Greg. You've made a mistake aligning with Walker. We both know what he cost you once. Don't let him ruin you again. Her pulse froze. She stared at the words, cold creeping up her spine. Greg wasn't threatening. He was warning. He knew something. That night, Madison drove to the clinic anyway. Ethan was outside under the awning, sleeves rolled up, fixing a generator in the drizzle. Didn't expect you tonight, he said. She stepped closer, raindrops glinting in her hair. Seems like I keep finding my way back here. He smiled. Maybe that's not a bad thing. But when their eyes met, the warmth in hers trembled, because for the first time, she wasn't sure the past she'd buried was going to stay buried. 2 days later, Ethan found Madison waiting in the clinic lobby long after closing. The place was dark except for the soft hum of a desk lamp. She sat on a bench, coat still damp from the rain, a folder clutched in her hands like it might burn her. We need to talk, she said quietly. He studied her face, the tension around her eyes, the way her fingers wouldn't stop trembling. What happened? She handed him the folder. Inside were old emails, meeting transcripts, and a termination memo with his name at the top. Only this time, it bore 2 signatures, hers and Greg Simmons's. He forged the report that justified your dismissal, she said, her voice barely steady. It wasn't just policy, Ethan. It was a setup. The board wanted you gone because saving that patient meant exposing their insurance fraud. Ethan's breath caught. So you knew? I thought it was about liability, Madison said, eyes glistening. I signed off without reading the attachments. I told myself it was business, but I destroyed your life to save theirs. The silence that followed was heavier than the years between them. Ethan looked down at the papers, then back at her. Why tell me now? Because they're trying to do it again, to your clinic. Greg's petitioning the city to revoke your medical license for unsanctioned treatment. He rubbed a hand over his face, exhaling hard. So that's what your warning text meant. Madison nodded, voice breaking. I'll testify. I'll tell the board what really happened, even if it ruins me. Ethan's eyes softened, but his tone stayed measured. You don't owe me your career, Madison. She stepped closer. It's not about debt. It's about truth. He held her gaze for a long time, the storm of hurt and gratitude mixing in his eyes. Finally, he whispered, then we'll face them together. Outside, thunder rumbled low and distant, echoing off the buildings like the world itself was bracing for what came next. The boardroom of Cole Industries was everything Ethan hated. Polished glass, cold marble, and the faint scent of fear disguised as perfume. He stood beside Madison, feeling wildly out of place in his worn jacket, while across the table, Greg Simmons smiled like a man who'd already won. Dr. Walker, Greg began smoothly. It's admirable that you and Ms. Cole are playing savior to the poor, but you're trespassing on company territory. The clinic's existence undermines our insurance partners. Ethan folded his arms. You mean it makes you look bad for charging people what kindness gives for free? Greg's smirk faltered. This isn't about morality. Exactly, Madison cut in, voice sharp as glass. It's about integrity. 2 years ago, this board fired a doctor for saving a life. You called it a breach of protocol. I call it courage. And I was wrong to sign that order. The room stirred. Whispers. Uneasy glances. Greg slammed a file shut. You'd sacrificed this company for a janitor in a lab coat. Ethan took a slow breath. I didn't come here for revenge, Mr. Simmons. I came because the truth matters. People matter. He slid the forged documents onto the table. You framed me. And Madison found proof. The silence cracked like ice. When security escorted Greg out minutes later, Madison sat back, trembling, the kind of trembling that comes after you finally stop running. Ethan reached for her hand under the table. You didn't have to do this, he murmured. I did, she whispered. Because for once, I wanted to do what was right, not what was safe. Weeks passed. The clinic stayed open, funded, protected, and fuller than ever. The city wrote about it. People donated. Children laughed in hallways that once echoed empty. One snowy evening, Madison visited again. Noah was drawing superheroes by the heater, Ethan sorting supplies. She held 2 mugs of cocoa and smiled softly. I figured heroes shouldn't drink alone. Ethan looked up, a rare, easy grin crossing his face. Then sit down. You've earned a cape. They sat together on the worn couch. Noah nestled between them, the snow glowing beyond the frosted window. Madison exhaled, a long, quiet breath of peace. You saved my life twice, Ethan. Once in the ER, and once after. He smiled gently. Guess we both learned that healing doesn't always happen in hospitals. Outside, the city lights flickered gold against the snow, and for the first time, neither of them felt alone. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more stories that stay with you.